Maurice, listen, this is great that I finally get you on my podcast because you are one interesting dude. I've been following along on TikTok because, as people will understand, we're all concerned about our health, and you actually really caught my attention. And Maurice, tell us all about who you are and what's going on with your life on TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, my favorite social media. Well, I've been doing this for a very long time actually. It's almost like putting awareness out there for younger and older people. Because what happened is what we thought was healthy was not really necessarily as healthy as we thought. And the way I kind of start looking at things is I like to question everything. I like to question things because why do we have sick people in this environment that we live in? And I start to kind of question it, and from there, that's what kind of got me into the nutrition field. So I've been as a clinical nutritionist now for the past coming up to about 17 years. And what I've learned in pharmaceutical, or let's say educational environment, is nothing that I practice today. It's completely different because I always question things, and I always question things where our money goes, where our taxes goes, and everything. And what got me into this level, I wanted to heal people because every person can heal, and there's a solution for everybody. It's just we have to actually understand how it works, what pathways it goes through our bodies, and how we can actually go after the root cause and not just fix a symptom and take medications for life. And that's what kind of got me into this field. And the social media was more of me presenting, who I am, what I do, and how I try to actually let every person realize exactly how you can actually heal your body and heal your heart specifically. And that's why I kind of put all my designation toward heart disease, because I experienced an issue with my heart almost 11 years ago. And that's what kind of got me to push even further.
There you have it. And this is what the great intro to exactly what this podcast is all about. It's about your heart health and being a guy who's later in life and being torn with the fact that I was ignorant for a long part of my life to not know about proper nutrition and food. I come from a Russian, Ukrainian, French family, so you can imagine the stuff I've eaten. Now, my ancestors and my relatives, they all lived a long life, but they were eating a very different kind of food than we are here in the 21st century. So I kind of equate their health to that. So that's why I wanted you on here is I wanted to help guys who are dealing with like high cholesterol issues and being afraid of, what's happening in the later part of their life. And then young people, young men who maybe need the guidance now that can help them not have this issue when they're my age. And that's why I have you on. And I'm really intrigued by the stuff that we're going to get to talk about. Now, you look like one crazy dude, though, man. You've got some pretty uniqueness to you, which is really fine. And then I found out that you're living out off grid, out planting berries out in your little homestead out in Western Canada. That's pretty fascinating. What's your mental state at this point as you're helping people understand heart health and so on? And we'll get into the heart health and stuff, but I'm more intrigued by why you're deciding to have this quality of life now that you're having.
Well, you always have to, because me, I've always kind of been, I question a lot of things, and I've been through lots myself over the years and stuff. And you get to a point where, every morning you wake up, you're thankful, you're able to wake up, you're alive. But what's after that? Everything is becoming more of a routine. You wake up, you take a shower, you get ready, you go to work, you come back, you do the same thing. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why we do a lot of these things. Over the past couple of years, I thought, you know what, I gotta break that. I gotta break that routine, and that's when I start to kind of look into the off-grid location where I'm not away from people completely. I'm just away from the environment. I'm away from being as almost like a controlled group where we just follow a routine. And I just wanted to break free. And the moment I broke free from that, my health became better because I've always kind of put myself in a situation. The place that got you sick, what makes you think you're gonna actually heal in that same place? You actually have to move somewhere where you can actually find yourself, find what's missing. And that's what I did. And yes, being here, I built my tiny house from scratch, had no idea how to actually put a 2x4 together or anything. And one of the funny thing I did is when I've ordered my lumber, I thought, I wanted to do something like a 20-foot long by 12 foot. So I've ordered everything in a 20 feet length. So imagine, lifting like a 6x6 by 20 feet or a 6x8 by 20 feet where every piece of lumber is like 600 to 800 pounds. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Because I don't know any better. I learned as I went. We took down trees, I flattened the ground, I did everything manually by hand, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every second of it. And that's when realized that, the human being was meant to move at least 80, 90% of the time. And maybe 10%, that's when you sleep and you sit and you eat and that's it. And I think the only reason we became to a point where everybody has so many diseases because we do the opposite. We do like 90% sitting, we sit IRL, we barely move our blood flow, our muscle stimulation, or anything, and we end up maybe 10% or maybe 1% of the day we exercise and do certain good things, and that's it. So we're becoming such a human being that, we just sit, look at the computer screen, and don't do anything else. And I wanted to change all that. And this, for the past couple of years, been doing the tiny house living and everything. It's night and day.
Yeah, and your house looks like it's up. So those people who are listening via podcast, I'm looking at your structure. It's not leaning over. So I think you knew how to build. I think you figured out how to build it. It's not like that. It's not in a caved look. Very nice.
And the funny thing is, I was waiting for a winter time because we actually got like a 7 foot snow here fall. I'm like, okay, crossing the fingers, waiting and holding. Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Everything held nicely, and I'm thriving. So I love the idea and the area behind it.
Right, and that's allowing you to be a really good communicator with trying to help people nutritionally with heart issues and so on. And when you were talking earlier about the sedentary lifestyle of human beings and the journey of the broke mentality, right? Monday, Friday, take Saturday, Sunday off to start exactly the same thing, excuse me, on Monday morning. That's a really tough life and one that's really hard for people to get out of, even if they're making good money, they're making their payments. It's still a tough life because if they're sick in an environment. And I understand that testament because I've lived that kind of life. So, and that's what brings us again back to why I wanted you on the show is I'm intrigued by how both mentally and health wise you're able to help people because you're practicing, Maurice, what you're preaching in your lifestyle and being a nutritionist. And like for guys like me, I don't really want to tell everybody how old I am, but, and I'm worried now. Legitimately, as a guy who's an outdoors guy, who's been involved in the environment and all kinds, I've done a lot of things. Yeah, I'm worried, I'm worried. And I'm sure there's a lot of men out there right now worried about their health, their heart health, their cardiovascular health. And is the system blind? Why do they need people like you now, Maurice? Why is your large following you? What are they missing from what we understood as traditional health? What's going on with that?
What's missing is a lot of misinformation, a lot of lies, and we've all been taught to listen to these guys that wear white coats and you walk into a room where you have a 7 minute conversation, and I think they're one of the fastest salespeople ever, and people actually got used to that system because their parents and their grandparents they relied on them heavily. So every time there's an issue, there's a cure for it in their mind, there's medication for it, and don't question. So they actually made that window so short. And I think everybody is living in a lie, to be honest with you. There's so many lies out there and so many hidden information that people follow that. And what I feel bad for is the new generation. If we don't actually wake them up and tell them, this is how things should be done correctly, they're just going to continue following that route. And we're going to be probably the last generation that we know the good side and the bad side.
We could because we have something to compare at this point, but eventually with AI, it'll be what's dictated and that'll be it. So we're
That's it.
basically the last bastion of and I guess that's why I'm concerned. And, you know, I'm not worried because death is inevitable and, you know, whenever somebody wants to treat me to keep me alive from one, something else is good. I just wanna have good quality of life until my lights go out. And when you're young, you don't see that. So McDonald's hamburgers aren't going to really affect you in your mental state because hey, it's really good. Even though if you could start early in life not eating that kind of food, you'd probably have a better projection later in life to be healthy. And and I understand what you're saying about the two sides not being able to match. You know, at the end of this generation, basically a Generation X, once it's 20 years from now, all of what we're doing will be gone. It'll probably be wiped off the internet, to be quite frank with you. So it's the education we can give now, and that's my worry. As a guy, that's my worry is first for myself, I want to live whatever I have left as healthy as possible because I do love life. I love life. I don't have enough life to do everything I want to do. And young people aren't mentally in that state yet, but maybe the bend that you're doing. And that's whenever I look at your TikToks, now some of the stuff you talk about over my head, like completely over my head. But the root stuff that's important to get to where my general health thoughts are very understandable. And I think that's what you bring. But I go back to your delivery is unique because you actually care. I think that's what I've got out of your interviews is that you care. You actually care about people. Yes, you know you're in business like everybody else is who's trying to do things, but I think you care, and that's really evident when you watch your podcast, your social media stuff. When I first talked to you, we talked about the fact that the whole society right now is missing the food thing. So how are you helping people? Is it just nutritionally? Is it with education? How are you formulating this?
So it's all about education and making the person be aware their surroundings because I always say what is too good to be true, question things, and when it comes down to your health, always look above and beyond what the products are. I always try to kind of tell everybody, try to stick to like a single ingredient. So for example, if you're buying meat, just buy the meat. Don't buy anything from like the middle aisle where you have everything in cans or you have everything in boxes, but when you look at the ingredients, you cannot spell half of them. You cannot even say, you know, they could be anywhere between 4 to 10, 11 different ingredients that our bodies aren't designed to actually digest and absorb and break them down. We actually put so much stress on our gut, on our livers, that we end up overstimulating our organs, causing more harm than good. So the whole idea is to kind of stick to a single ingredient, and that's what drove me as well to kind of go off a grid because you're not very close to the city, you're not very close to small towns, and you're very limited. So if you can't really control yourself because you have your pantry and you have your fridge full of food, well now you could, move off a grid to a small location, have your main essential meat and eggs, and you know for a fact every day you're gonna wake up, you're gonna have your meal. This is all you have in the fridge. You'll have candies, you'll have chocolates, you'll have sugars, you'll have sweets, you'll have anything to crave. And that's what we're missing. And I think, once we actually get all these essential back to every person's fridge and throw 80% of your pantry stuff, because when we actually start to look at even heart healthy or cholesterol free or fat free. But if you actually turn the box and look at the ingredients, yes, they might maybe take cholesterol off from specific ingredients, or yes, they might take the fat out, but they're going to actually infuse it with synthetic vitamins and they're going to actually add more sugary treats because they know I can control your brain when I feed you sugar compared to actually just letting the body thrive on fats, for example.
Right. Sugar is a big issue. Us people who are older, you know, we were brought up on that. I used to eat corn syrup and half a loaf of bread for breakfast when I'd leave the farm in the morning, or I'd eat molasses. Like I'd pour that stuff on like there was no tomorrow. And now I don't eat any sugar. Like I found that not eating sugar for myself has stopped all the inflammation in my body. I actually don't feel it like I used to. So I think trial and error, you once because people say, oh, I just can't see myself doing it. That's just all excuses. I don't have any time for excuses. You can quit. Quite frankly, if you quit, you actually feel better. It's the quitting that's the hard part, and that I can empathize with. It's hard to quit, right? The balance of food. So when you talk about meat and eggs, why can two people go to the same university, get the same doctorate, study the same material, get the same passing grade, but completely disagree with each other on nutritional value, the food pyramid or carnivore or diet? Like, how does that train actually not even run on the same tracks?
Well, I think what you learn in school, or let's say you go to school, universities, you're educated, you have your bachelor degree or whatever it is. We're being taught a specific route. Some people are pretty much, once you graduate, pretty much you are obsolete. You're already probably 10, 15 years behind what's up to date. Seriously. And if you don't actually take the initiative to actually continue researching, continue educating yourself, continue looking at guidelines from country to country, not just where you live, from country to country, and question things, you're never going to know the answer. So you have two types of people. One person where, hey, I graduated, I have my degree on the wall, I'm going to open up a clinic and make $100,000 a year. And you have the other is like, you know what? This is a stepping stone for me. Now it's time for me to research, re-educate myself, and continue growing because things are changing on a daily basis. But a lot of the scientific studies and references and stuff that have been done for years, and there's like ongoing studies comes out daily that I can go and actually educate myself how to actually interpret these scientific literatures. And from there, I'm actually going to grab valuable information. So if you go back into like the egg story, where you have, you know, a big chunk of people will say, well, eggs is dangerous for you, do not eat no more than one a day. And you have one like myself who eats 20 eggs a day on average. Well, if you break every egg, well, you have 1.5 grams of fat in the egg, perfectly normal. That's how we get our essential fatty acids, for example. Then you have 168 milligrams of cholesterol. That's interesting. This is kind of scary what the doctor been telling us and what we've learned in education. But you take the 168 milligrams, you go and you actually do some scientific literature and studies and peer-reviewed and everything, and it says, well, hey, you're 168 milligrams of cholesterol, that's nothing, because whether you eat cholesterol or not, your liver produces 3,000 milligrams of cholesterol daily. That's okay. That's interesting. Then you look into it. Dietary cholesterol has nothing to do with your um, blood cholesterol. So you can eat 168 milligrams of cholesterol per egg times 10 eggs. That's almost what? Almost 1600 milligrams of cholesterol. That's half of what your liver makes. And if you do this on a daily basis and you get your cholesterol levels or your lipid panel checked as a biomarker, well, nothing has changed in the past 45 days. So technically, some people will actually fear of eating cholesterol. Some people, they actually enjoy it, because when I look at things, we have to take it a step further. We cannot just whatever we learn, that's it, stick with it, and this is what you learn, this is what you practice. There's way more missing information out there, way more missing information. And the thing is, I always question it. Yes, I've been to educational schooling system and everything, and the problem is just a single book that the educational system picked and they taught us on. But there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of books out there. How come we never really picked each one and learned from each book? Anybody can go to a library back in the day and you look at cholesterol, you have about 100 books on cholesterol. But why is it that the schooling system, they only pick one single book and they teach us on it and they grade us on it, and that's it? So what happened to the others?
Well, and that's the question, right? Why are we not gathering all the information? And that's the point. And that's the point I was trying to make, Maurice, when I'm talking about when you have an educational system with two people coming out, the one that prospers is the one that continues to. I think that's why they call it practice, right? You just continue. You just continue. Tell me, You have said on social media that you can, not you, but it can be done to decrease plaque buildup and so on in arteries. Like, how is that done? Because the doctors are saying, just give me cholesterol medication. That's it. There's nothing else. Is there more we can be doing at an older age and a younger age to deal with that issue? Because it's a big issue. It's the number one killer, right? Heart disease. So it is a big issue.
Oh, 100%. And nothing to do with cholesterol. Cholesterol is almost like a sign that is telling you there's something going on in your body the moment it starts to increase. So the question is, well, while this is happening, if you do find out you have calcification or you have heart disease, can you do something about it? Of course you could. The first thing you want to do is look into your diet, because your diet plays the biggest role. At least 80-90% of your lifestyle, your health, your diet plays the biggest role. What you put in that gut, you're either gonna feed it disease or you're gonna actually heal one. So the first thing you want to do is you go back to your basics. Your basics are a single ingredient product: meat, eggs, fish. Cheeses or dairy, not a lot of people do well on them. So stick to a single ingredient. That's your first step. The second step is eliminate inflammation. Inflammation is the biggest killer. Not so much that other things and cholesterol, like we're picking on small little biomarkers that are irrelevant. Pretty much we have to look at the inflammation. Well, do we have systemic inflammation? Do we have chronic inflammation? Where is that inflammation coming from? Is it the way I sleep? Maybe I don't sleep enough. Is it the way I eat? Maybe the way I drink? Maybe the way I brush my hair and actually I use certain chemicals to actually for underarm deodorants or synthetic clothing. What am I doing wrong that I'm causing that inflammation? Is it the house that I live in that actually contains mold? Is it the bed sheet that actually contains synthetic material and chemicals that we breathe when we sleep? So we have to question everything. Once you question everything and you come down to a point where, hey, I just want to make it as basic as possible, now we're starting to work on the inflammation level. Now we're actually dropping the inflammatory factors that we keep checking on the biomarkers month after month, and it's actually dropping. So for example, I look at HSCRP, C-reactive protein, systemic inflammation. Doctor says, oh, if you're a 3 is optimal. No, you have to be actually under 0.9 milligrams per deciliter. That's optimal. Once we figure that out, we fix the inflammation. That's your first step. Your second step is, why am I having heart disease? Let's assume we're talking about heart disease. Well, there's deficiencies. What allows the arteries, because you have contraction and relaxation, like a blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. And it's all about contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation. We live in such a high contraction stage. So that means you have way too much calcium, not enough magnesium. So your body's constantly being contracted all the time. You work out, you cause contraction. You lose magnesium, you cause contraction. We're always in a fight or flight stimulation. We're never really in a relaxed environment. We're always stressed. We're always worrying about, hey, am I going to wake up earlier to go to work? Am I going to make enough money to pay the bills? So we are always living in a stress stage. But that stress stage is causing your magnesium to become deficient. So that's why magnesium plays a huge role of over 400 different enzymatic functions. And that's why almost 88% of the population are deficient in magnesium. And what is the number one deficiency that starts allowing your arteries to become stiff? It's magnesium, because your arteries aren't relaxing anymore. They're becoming so stiff. And what happens is over time, they're just going to start to actually create injuries inside the arteries. And of course, that's when you have your oxidized lipids and your foam cells and everything getting stuck and causing more of a problem.
Wow. And that's the problem. We hear so much, excuse me, of what is the problem? How is the problem? And then you just get a pill. You're given a pill, and that's the part I don't understand. And for us people who are at a different stage of our life, that's the first thing we get is a pill. We don't get told stop eating sugar. We don't. They say stop eating meat.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
stop eating meat. And does meat not contain every nutrient that you possibly could get in a vegetable?
You know, it's funny if you compare meat to like vegetable. If you eat, let's say, 1 pound of meat, you have all the minerals, all the vitamins, essential fatty acids, everything. That if you want to actually compare it to eating like plants or eating vegetables, to give you an example, like I eat 1 pound of yak meat, for example, that's almost equivalent to about close to about 7 to 8 pounds of broccoli or vegetable loads. Now imagine as a human person, can you actually absorb and digest that much? Of course not. You're gonna be sitting there eating for hours and you're gonna be bloated
You're
that
going
the
to be
food is,
farting like a cowboy.
yeah, no kidding. You're gonna have so much methane build up from all that fermentation, and yet you have a certain group who will tell you, oh, well, this is healthy. Well, how could that be healthy for you?
Right, right. It's really true. I found that, if I eat pasta, I feel bloated. But also, if I eat anything that's like broccoli or cauliflower, it's bloated for days. It doesn't seem to even digest properly. I don't. And this is the part that's so confusing for us. It's so confusing because you're having two sides of the equation being jammed down your throat all the time. And then a guy like you comes along that you're believable. You're believable. But I think what's more believable about you is that you've obviously suffered and you didn't want to suffer. Is that what's really driving you when we talk about all of this stuff? Is that the suffering that you had yourself that you want to see other people benefit?
You know, I don't want anybody to suffer, and I don't want anybody to go what I went through. And sometimes, you know, we always say, you know, trial and error. I want to actually, the years that I've actually suffered and had so much issues, I want to bypass all that information to a lot of younger crowds so they can actually bypass that and don't waste 10, 15 years in pain or in heart disease living or whatever it is, because what we thought was healthy is not necessarily healthy. You know, if I go back years ago, and the first time I went to the doctor and my doctor freaked out, he said, wow, you have high cholesterol, Maurice. Let me put you on statins. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. So yes, I was taking statins. You know, within the first couple months, you know, I started to have headaches, can't even focus, losing muscle mass, getting foggy brains, wake up, and I get so angry so fast. I couldn't actually hold a conversation or anything. Then I go back to the doctor. He's like, well, I think maybe you should stay with the statin, but let's switch you to plant-based. And I was eating almost plant-based for anywhere between 7 to 9 years on and off. Then after that, I went straight because in the beginning, I felt good. Everybody's gonna feel good. You know why? Because if you're coming from a heavily processed intake of food, of burgers and pizzas and Subways, so-called healthy, yet you actually go on a plant base for the first year, 2 years, wow, you feel great because you're detoxifying, you're eating a lot of fibers, all the toxins are actually being accumulated and attached to the fiber and it's being flushed out. Wow, you feel great. But year after year, you'll notice that you start to drop in mentally, focus, dry skin, hair loss, weight gain, a lot of methane, and they tell you that's natural. And suddenly you end up having a heart attack. And people didn't believe me when I told them, yeah, I did have a heart attack, you know, when I was plant-based because I was deficient and I destroyed my mitochondria. And when I did a value of all my deficiency level of my vitamins, I was completely deficient from B12 to essential fatty acid to omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, from carnosine to taurine to a lot of different amino acids that the heart requires to stay at its optimal level. It was actually being destroyed. That's when I actually, after that, that was back in 2014, roughly 2015, I dropped everything. I dropped everything, and it was a first time in my life when I came back from the hospital. It's funny, and even in the hospital, they give you for breakfast a bowl of cornflakes with 2 tablespoons of sugar, some what is it called? And they
Margarine.
margarine and they give you like as a treat as a donut. I'm like, and this is they call like a healthy meal, and they gave me a booklet to actually sign up to go to like educational school on how to eat and what to eat as a plant based. That was during the time I was in the hospital. The day I got out from the hospital, was my first time ever. I did a prolonged fasting. Didn't even know what prolonged fasting is. Didn't know what intermittent fasting was. I didn't eat nothing for 3 days, and in 3 days I just went and bought some books from the library and I just sat and read. And the first couple of books I was reading was all about Paleolithic and other books. And I started reading like history back before back in the 1930s. I wanted to know exactly what's going on. It took me 3 days. And in 3 days, I changed my mind completely. And after that, I went strictly carnivore.
And how long have you been doing just carnivore diet?
I haven't stopped since then.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't stopped since then. Now, the carnivore I do, a lot of people would question it. I was 100% strict carnivore for the first 3 years. After that, I did go raw carnivore for about 4.5 years. It was incredible. And right now, what I've done is I still kind of do half and half, sometimes raw, sometimes cooked. But because I do train quite a bit, I do what is called a carb load once a week. And we can talk about that as well too. And a carb load where I do not eat anything all day long, but I wait for last meal where I do a carb load to actually uptake my glucose level. And I've noticed by doing that, I maintained more muscle mass, more energy, more cognition, and I actually feel much better that way.
What are you using for carbs?
I use the least anti-nutrient effect out there, which is white rice. That's it.
White rice.
Yes.
Wow. Rinsed, eh? Rinsed.
Of course, I rinse it multiple times, and
People
I
don't realize that what rolls out of
yeah,
your strainer when you don't. Yeah, you gotta rinse rice. People don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they don't
I've
realize where
seen,
it's growing.
oh, it's crazy. I've seen lots where they don't do it. I'm like, you sure you're gonna eat that? But no, you have to definitely
Yeah,
rinse it out.
yeah. There's some real great stories about rice fields and what happens in them. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
that's why I can't really trust a lot of stuff out there that we actually eat, and you always question it, and that's why and I tell this to a lot of people. A human being, our gut is so freaking acidic that we actually have the same acidity as a vulture. Our pH is between 1.5 to 2 or maximum 2.5. So anything we eat as raw, like I eat the raw fish, the egg yolks, and the meat, let's assume they are contaminated. Well, guess what? The acidity in your gut will destroy any contamination. But yet, our guts are becoming more alkaline because of influences on other people. They say, well, your body should be alkaline, and they actually misinformed that the body is tightly regulated. Your gut, your blood, your urine, your mouth has a different pH level. It doesn't mean that you want to alkaline your gut. You alkaline your gut, and that's why you get like 70 to 80% of the population, they actually have H. pylori.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that. Well, it's funny you talk about that issue with the gut. You'll go to your doctor and get an antibiotic, and they won't tell you to take a probiotic. I was never told in my entire existence of taking an antibiotic until 2012. You need to take a probiotic with this. And there was another probiotic that one was for the gut and the other was for the intestines. And I can't remember the two different styles, but there's some treatment with inside the intestines too. Do you know what that is, Maurice? Which one am I missing here?
So,
There's a
so the,
probiotic that works in the gut, and then is it an enzyme? I'm not sure what it is.
there's a prebiotics. Prebiotics are actually like food for the bacteria. And that's usually how it works. So you have your probiotics, which is like a live bacteria, and you have the prebiotic where you can actually feed them. So for example, could be something like resistant starches, for example. So you can feed your good microbiome as well. So they actually thrive, and you can actually destroy a lot of the pathogens. But as well, with the antibiotics you take, it actually destroys the good and the bad bacteria. So you got to make sure you are replenishing correctly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so anybody who's taking an antibiotic, they should question with their doctor or a pharmacist what they should be taking. Tell me something. I want to go back on what you said about when you were a vegan and so on. You told me when I first met you that you have a lot of clients who were vegans before that were almost dying. What was that story again? You told me like they were so sick from actually being a vegetarian that they had to come to you to get better. What's that story again?
The funny thing is, and I did, I think, mention this to you, almost about 80% of my patients are all vegans. There were vegans and they're switching because, and it's funny, like I've had a recent one 2 weeks ago, for example, been vegan for 7 years, been on cholesterol medications for 11 years. They are currently on high blood pressure medication, antidepressant pills, and they're taking a prescription of omega-3s, where it's actually derived from soy and derived from flaxseed, and it's prescription. So yet your so-called healthy is not so healthy, because if you become vegan, you are on a plant eater, you are taking all these medications. Well, guess what? Don't you think that whoever told you to go vegan, that actually benefit you of you, because you're actually adding medications and you're adding supplementation as prescription? So obviously they're winning both sides. But yes, they're not living a good life. They're constantly depressed. They're constantly having a foggy brain. They're constantly having issues with their digestion, where they're constantly in a fermented state. They're constantly producing methane. And guess what? They're all day long. We're not cows that we can actually just sit in the kitchen and graze all day long to feel actually satisfied, to be honest with you.
Well, we can, but when we're cows, then we become cows, right? Is that
Well,
really the
that's the issue like we run into, like seriously, like sometimes we have to come to like a realistic. Like I remember when I was vegan or plant-based eating, I'm never satisfied. So I'm constantly, like I would actually never done this before. So every time I go to work, I'll have like a bag, my lunch bag. Well, I have carrots, celery, broccoli, cauliflowers, meats, some nuts and seeds and a whole bunch of other stuff, just to keep me satiated. I can't even have a conversation with a client back in the day without me actually chewing or eating something, because I feel that hunger feeling all the time. And if I don't eat, my mind is not working correctly.
Right, right, right. Well, I understand that. I understand that part because, as you know, I've moved towards being a carnivore eater only, and I can eat once a day. I'll have a big meal, but I can eat once a day and not even walk around being hungry remotely, and not have to go by a donut stand and eat a donut. It's funny once you shut the sugar off, right? But that story was interesting when you told me that the majority of your clients are people who aren't healthy on vegan diets. And we're not here today to tell people what to do. We're just here to help them understand that there's options that they can educate themselves about. And I always want to say that because I don't want us to sound like we're selling them anything, because we are. We're selling them the fact that you should educate yourself. That's the sales job today. If we want to talk about we're selling something, is and I'm ignorant in this regard because I lived my life on poutines and pizzas on Fridays and the meat and potatoes and salad. And listen, I felt like shit. Like I felt like shit. Period. And people feel that way, and they blame it on everything else because they're told that that food is, the government tells you that that's the pyramid. Eat that food. It's good for you. Like rolled stoned oats in the morning. Like I must have ate 400 tons of that stuff. I'll never eat rolled oats again, ever, 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 ever. And I had 3 pounds of brown sugar on it too, right? I forgot the I
You,
forgot the
you
main
need that
ingredient.
sweetness.
Yeah, I forgot the main ingredient. So listen, I want to talk to you and ask you this question. Tell me how it's possible for people to change their arteries being calcified and the mental state. That's a problem. And I'm talking about that because I know some people who are having those issues and their mental state is starting to be fragile because they don't have the answers. If you were to give a 1, 2, 3, what a guy should do or a woman should do who's worried about that, what is the psych? Because I'm not asking. I know you're not a psychologist, but you understand the psychologist part of it, right? The worry can actually make these issues even worse. So where do you see that?
I think, the first main thing is stop using food as entertainment. Use food to satisfy your need, because what you feed your microbiome, that's the reflection you get. You feed them good, healthy food, you're going to be always optimized. You're going to always be driven. You're going to always feeling positive. You're unstoppable. And age is just a freaking number. Don't even think of that. The moment you stop using food as entertainment, your whole life will change. That's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, whether you have soft plaque stenosis, aorta, whether you have calcification, all that is 100% reversible. It took years to develop. It is going to take years to reverse it. but you have to put a stop to it. The moment you actually stop using food as entertainment, you automatically you're diminishing all that inflammation build up in your system. Once you diminish that inflammation and once you start to utilize your food correctly, one of the most important things that happens in the body, you start to become more tuned in with your system. So if you go out and you want to eat pizza or burgers once in a while or protein, for example, I always tell this to everybody, we all have to live a little. At the end of the day, we are all human and we all make mistakes. But if you have the a cheat meal or the entertainment meal, I call it, I don't call it a cheat meal. You have the entertainment meal, you know exactly what you put in your body, you know exactly what to do with it, and you know exactly how to get rid of it. That's where you have intermittent fasting. That's where you have digestive enzymes. That's when you have hydrochloric acid. You want to actually break that food as fast as possible and get rid of it from your system. You had fun with your friends, you had a drink, you feel amazing, but now you know you did certain things to your system. You want to fix so you don't cause a long-term inflammation. Narrowing these down, and after that, you start to work with your body. It's the same thing as you building a house. It took me a whole 7 months to actually build my unit. So when you actually stop all that stuff, it's not just going to happen overnight. And don't ever think that if you switch to carnivore, that's it. You fix the issue. No, you haven't. Because if it took years to get there, it's going to take years to reverse. So once you go carnivore, yes, you're replenishing your nutrients, you're replenishing you're fulfilling any missing gaps and everything in your diet. Now, when your body is becoming optimized within a year or two, now the body goes into homeostasis. Now it's actually reversing the issues that you've had before. Now it's actually reversing possible calcifications and soft plaque. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain supplementation at a mega dose that I actually put into a protocol for the individual based on their biomarkers and others that we can actually speed up the process. But no matter what, the human body has to take its course as well
Right,
too.
right,
But
right.
we always have to kind of keep one thing in mind, if we're looking a little bit more in specific, a question, don't look at the heart itself that is having issues and injuries. Look at other organs that actually do the filtration or detoxification of pathway 1, pathway 2 detoxification. How are they actually indirectly working? Because they're the one who's actually causing the issue in the original place. So whatever you put in the gut is your first thing that you have to actually start fixing before anything else. The second thing is wake up and feeling thankful. That's very, very important because every morning you wake up, don't wake up feeling anger or, oh shoot, I just gotta get dressed and go to work and rush yourself and all that. Don't rush yourself. Work is work. You lose one job, guess what? There's another freaking job on the corner. A job is just to get you by till you actually have your own possible business, till you actually go after your dream, go after your passion. So wake up with a smile. Whether you're actually working 16 hours a day or 20 hours a day, know for a fact this is temporary till you get what you want to do in life. That's very
Yeah,
important for every individual.
well, it is. And here's the problem. When we're young, we have a big dream catcher. As we get older, that dream catcher gets filled with other realities that we forget. We forget what we really wanted, right? There's a great video, If Money Was No Object. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's a great video about what you would do with your life. And listen, we need money. And that's the problem right now I'm looking at with this health issues with guys, is that guys are stressed to the boots. They're being pulled in different directions, and quick meals are all they have because they have no time to really think about themselves if they have other issues. They wake up stressed in the morning. They go to bed stressed at night. They've got their kids or they got their wife or they have their ex-wife and their kids. And I understand women are in the same boat if they're delivered the other way. But I'm a guy and I understand guys, and I don't understand women as I should because I'm not a woman. I'd never be a gynecologist because I don't understand that. But I could be a urologist because I have those parts. So when I think about it from a guy's perspective, listen, we worry about this stuff, and that's why I really am excited to talk to you, is because we have neglected it to the point where we have no answers. We're being told stressful things by our physicians. We're being manipulated by the longevity nature of what we need to perform. It's such, I think besides food, that it's the mental state as much as anything else that you have to fix in order to get down that path. And Maurice, here's the craziest thing. I thought about this the other day. I'm curious if you thought about this. We're going to die, guaranteed, and we're being told, "We'll take this because this is going to keep you alive longer." But is it giving us a good quality life is the question. Is eating carnivore and meat just as good for the flip of the coin as taking a statin? Is it just as good to talk to a nutritional person who's going to give you a caveat of other opportunities as it is to jam another pill down your throat? Like, and this is the confused nature, right? As we walk, this is the path a man walks as he gets into, middle age and so on. He's got a beer gut. He's not, his libido's all shot to hell. His muscle mass is going away. He doesn't know, like, I have friends like that. This is not me just imagining. I have friends that are sitting there going like, what's next for us? And then they get doctors' reports that your cholesterol, you're in the abnormal calcified range. Your cholesterol's through the roof. Your blood pressure's here, and now they're taking 35 medications and they're 45 years old with a beer gut, and they keep drinking. This is the phenomena that's going on, that people like you, I think, are helping, because you're giving us an alternative to be educated. And I think the only mistake people would make by watching you is not understanding that you're trying to educate them, and that's their responsibility to educate themselves. Do you agree with that?
100%. I can only put so much out there, right? And I can only put so much education out there, but if the person does not take that information and actually apply it and stay consistent, then, they're gonna look at me, oh, it's just another person putting information out there. But I'm putting free, valuable information for everybody to actually start looking the bigger picture. Start looking, don't rely. The problem is with our cultures, with the human right now, we rely on others what to do and how to do it, and why we should eat so much sugar and why we should eat these plants. Well, why don't you just take the time out of your busy schedule and maybe spend 10, 15 minutes a day researching things? Don't go to Google and type in, or go to AI. I'm talking real research. Go to like scientific references, take that information, and if you cannot, understand it, maybe put it in AI. Tell, hey AI, can you please explain that for me, just so you can make sense out of it, because it's not a
Absolutely.
layman's term. It's quite confusing. So, and this way you can actually learn a lot of the stuff. But, we have to break free from being stressed all the time. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been there where, you wake up, you get ready, you go to work. Well, you have to make your mortgage, you have to make your payments. And as we age, things are getting more and more and more expensive. Now, right now, the younger generation, they can't even afford to buy a house, or even have a proper mortgage, because they're not making enough on a monthly basis to actually support themselves. And you know what? If I can go back 20 years back, because I was in that group, I would actually work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, just to be able to afford my mortgage. I wish I lived simple, because we've all been taught from our parents, but our parents were taught from others, and we forgot the old tradition way. Live simple. Live in a freaking trailer, live in a tiny house, zero mortgage, you're barely paying for electricity. Like, one person does not need to live in a freaking 2,000 square feet house. One person can live in a 300 or 400 square feet house, reduce your bills, say, you know what, this is how much I'm making on a monthly basis. Now I can actually afford things without taking loans, afford vacation, afford really good food quality. Because everybody right now, when I put them on a diet, they tell me, well, Maurice, carnivore is so expensive. I'm like, no, it's not. If you're only buying meat and eggs, and
It's
let's
cheaper.
break, it's cheaper. You
It's
spending, let's
cheaper.
say, $10 a day, $15 a day for eating 1 pound of meat. Let's say $15. $15 times what? We're looking about $500, let's say, a month. But the problem is, you
And you're not throw
guys,
and you're not throwing out and you're not throwing out
yeah,
$300 worth of vegetables that are going bad in your crisper.
yeah, there you go. You fill up the fridge with vegetables and sauces and
Yeah.
oils and a whole bunch of stuff, and you want to top off that meat. It's not the meat that is causing the issue. It's the stuff that you put on the meat that's actually causing these havoc on your gut. yet you're spending oils, seed oils of flavors and a whole bunch of other crap. Like
Yeah.
seriously, like
Yeah.
you're spending $400 in quality meat, but you're spending $700 on garbage that you're putting on top of your food to make it actually taste better. Give me a break. Eat the meat with some good with some good quality sea salt, and that's it. And you satisfy your need. You save so much money. You save so much money. Like right
Yeah.
now,
There's
you
no
know,
waste.
there's no waste. I promised myself when I get my dog, I've had Duke for 3 years. I'm like, the only time I'm gonna get my dog, only if I'm gonna be able to feed them raw food, because I've seen so many animals are fed kibbles and fed other things, and you wonder why we have such a high cancer rate, bone deformation, and a lot of other issues. Is because the dog is giving you such a short time of life compared to yourself. If we're given only, let's say, 60 years or 70 years and you're constantly eating canned food and processed food, how long do you think you're going to live without medications?
Yeah, it's funny you just talk about that because I have a friend of mine who feeds their dogs raw meat and they eat like shit.
Figure that out.
The dogs eat super well. And I mean the best of meat, the best of chicken, the best of lamb, and they eat everything that you shouldn't eat. It's actually pretty funny. Wait till I watch this video. I might not be invited over anymore. I might get a dog food bowl when I go over. Listen, Maurice, we promised that we wouldn't keep you too long today because you have a lot of other things. So in the last remaining minutes, I got a couple of things.
Sure, yeah,
So
go for it.
so let's talk about you personally. So you're in the west coast of Canada,
Yes,
and you're living high on the hog, out where the bears roam. So this is really good.
yes.
What can you offer for people who are interested in learning some more about health? I think you do some consulting, do you?
I do consulting, yes. You can definitely, go to my website. I do put the links all over my TikToks. We'll definitely share it with everybody. They can do a
Absolutely.
consultation with me one-on-one, and I go through everything with every individual. As we shared right now over the podcast, I share a lot of things, a lot of valuable from lifestyle to environmental to food to everything you put in that body and everything you put on your body, not just internally, everything you wear as well too. So this way the person is well educated on how to actually attack their chronic issue, disease, whatever it is, properly the right way with zero medication. Zero
And
medication.
it's not too expensive, and you're a practicer of what you preach, and that's why I had you on. I really was intrigued by the fact that you practice what you preach.
100%. And you know what? Whether I make zero or make $1 a day or more or less, for me it doesn't matter. For me is I live in a location where if I break even, I'm 100% happy. So, and I tell this to everybody, the amount that I charge is so minimal because I know the biggest expense is your lifestyle change, is your possible supplementation to fulfill missing gaps. That's your biggest expense. And I don't want to be the next functional so-called doctor or naturopathic doctor. I can call on every single person name where they charge you thousands of dollars, and yet on top of that you're paying thousands of dollars for supplementation. No, I'm not gonna do that. For me, if I can make that $1 or $100, I'm satisfied, more than happy. I can feed Duke raw, I can have my meal. I'm super excited about that. And at the end of the day, every patient of mine have become a friend of mine where we're constantly communicating back and forth to make sure they are following and they're staying consistent with everything.
Yeah, consistency is the big thing because it's a big change when you change your lifestyle of the food you eat and so on. I know for me, it's been a big change, and wanting to live forever is a weird process of thought because that's not a reality. But being as healthy as you can to enjoy what you have is such an important gift. And if you're young and you're listening or watching, it's a great time to change because you have this longevity thing that's a great gift. You have 30, 40 years of your life maybe ahead of you that you can change where I am, you will be there, right? Of having now to try to fix things to make sure you're healthy, right? Well, listen, Maurice, fantastic that you came on. There's something about you that makes me want to listen, and I think that's important. you have to be likable and you have to be deliverable and you have to be somebody who's experienced it. And with that, I would really appreciate you being on the show. And I look forward to talking to you about my own health. And I'm sure we're going to have you on another time for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate you, inviting me over and stuff. I know the hour sometimes goes by quick, and I'm sure we can go on an hours talking, everything is specific. And I'm sure, down the road we could, because, I do get sometimes, to be honest with you, certain requests where, Maurice, can you just grab a microphone and talk for 5, 6 hours? We just want to listen. And when you just put a lot of valuable information out there, I'm willing to do that. I have no problem. I really enjoy it. It's something that I have a passion and something that I practice on a daily basis. And I always tell this to everybody, don't compare yourself to others, and age is just a freaking number. You're pretty much every person is outstanding, and they have the capacity to do everything. Just don't let anybody stop you.
Yeah, and have a good mindset. Absolutely. Listen, Maurice, great talking to you. We'll definitely get with you again on another. I got so much other stuff I want to talk to you about, and you take care of my Duke for me. That's a
I will.
beautiful. That's a beautiful dog, and don't let him eat better than you. Maurice, thanks a lot for joining us. Okay, we'll talk to you another time for sure.
Sounds good, Frank. Thanks so much for having me.
All right,
Take
great
care.
having you. See you again.
Cheers.